Welcome to Paradigm Shift Parenting, a podcast for women who make their lives better by first making themselves better. At Paradigm Shift Parenting, we believe that self-improvement is the highest form of self-care. Each episode, we're going to either shift our mindset about something, explore the myth that motherhood and martyrdom are synonymous, replace the oh-so-trendy victimhood mentality with a healthy dose of accountability and responsibility, or simply explore the shared experiences of modern motherhood. I'm your imperfect host, Binky Bell, and I'm glad you're here.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Paradigm Shift Parenting Podcast. As always, my name is Binky Bell, and today I am here with Lindsey Richardson. And what we're going to talk about today is her experience with a pretty traumatic divorce. I would label it pretty traumatic. So we're going to talk about mostly about that. We'll probably get into some co-parenting, but we really, I think it'll be really helpful for Lindsey to share her story of what it's like basically having the rug completely pulled out from under you in life and what that healing process has been like and what's helped her. So, Lindsey, you can go ahead and say hi and give us a quick intro if you want.
Hello. Yeah, I absolutely, whenever you and I have talked so much about my divorce over the last couple of years. But beyond that one, I have a lot of perspective from my previous marriage. So for a little background, I have 2 failed marriages and a failed engagement under my belt before 35.
Racking them up.
Winning. Thank you. And so I have in very opposite types of divorce. I had a very healthy, amicable, great friendship, great co-parenting relationship with my daughter's father. And then the other one, which the only way I could describe it would be I would face 1,000 deaths more excruciating than the previous before I would ever face what I went through again.
Yeah. So to recap, you have one daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Brief summary, you got married pretty young, right?
Yes. So I got married really young. We met, we had a very instant chemistry as friends, and everybody's like, marry your best friend. And we were like, yeah, let's do that. So we did. I wasn't even allowed to drink at my wedding. I was 20. I was not a teenager, but I was 20 and my mom wouldn't even let me drink champagne that was gifted to me. So, but we got along really well. And then introducing a child into the mix was just kind of a realization that like, maybe we would just be better if we just took the marriage out of the relationship and just stayed really good friends. And a lot of people say that whenever they want to get divorced and they're like, we want to stay friends. I've been very fortunate that we've been able to do that. We split when she was quite young. She was about 6 months and she's 9 now. So we've been able to maintain a pretty good friendship, but we can get more into that later if we want.
Yeah. So then you had your second marriage, right? And that relationship started off pretty well, right? Like, I don't know you. I don't think we were talking very much at the beginning of that relationship, but during this second marriage, the outside perception, what I could see from the outside looking in, was that you guys got along really, really well. You were very supportive of each other. I know that he was really supportive and encouraging in you and changing like your lifestyle, like in terms of health and stuff, right? You had a major weight loss because he helped you. So what do you want to tell us about that marriage, like how it started and stuff? I don't know exactly how to get into it or what direction we should go with. I'll let you kind of do that because.
Sure, yeah. It didn't start out in a healthy place for either of us. We were both wrapping up ends to previous relationships. He was coming out of a very long-term marriage. He's significantly older than me. Not significantly, but like older.
He's not like 67.
No, not like it is. No, not like that. So neither one of us were really whole enough to begin with to even try to jump back into the fire. And he was very possessive. I wasn't necessarily so keen on getting married again after my first one. Not that the first one was awful, but I just was like, like, why do we need to get the government involved?
Right.
And in that relationship, he made it very apparent he wanted to get married. Like, he wanted me to have that last name, and he wanted me to be his. And it's kind of weird. My last marriage, it ended whenever my daughter was significantly younger, but we never went through the paperwork. We were just broke and like whatever.
Yeah.
So we actually, on paper, we were still legally married for many years, even if we lived in separate cities, separate states. Once I got into this relationship and I moved to Arkansas to be with him, it's like, I want this done. So it happened. And then there's no joke to this, literally got the final decree from the judge, walked down the hall in the courthouse to the clerk's office and applied for a marriage license, and then eloped that weekend. So.
Oh my gosh. Responsible. No, it's okay. I think
so.
We've all had weird stories.
And he was extremely supportive. I used to say it all the time whenever we dated, and he loved me in a way that I truly never thought I deserved. I had horrible self-esteem. And that really didn't go away during the marriage. But to your question, from the outside looking in, I also thought it was a perfect relationship. Hindsight, I see now, there was a lot of flags of like, this was bad. You didn't
from the beginning
deserve that. You didn't, this was bad. There was a few instances where it's like, oh, this wasn't the perfection that you so badly wanted it to be. And I did. I had a failed marriage. I had a broken engagement. I had a daughter. I wanted it to be my perfect ending. And I just threw myself into this man, even though I didn't really love myself. Like, I had never, even before any serious relationships, like high school, horrible self-esteem issues. And it just carried on. And it carried through that.
You said something that I think a lot of people have probably dealt with if they've had more than a few relationships. It's that need to go from one relationship to the next before healing yourself. And I feel like a lot of people, whenever you get married in your early 20s, you have this moment where you you do that. You realize that in retrospect, you go back and realize that it was so necessary to stop and heal yourself before going into another relationship. And I feel like that's one of those lessons that you can't really learn until you go through it. And it feels like a lot of people go through it in their 30s. Like, everybody that I know in their 30s now, they're kind of waking up a little bit. A lot of divorces are happening. A lot of personal transformations. Like, I feel like your 30s are like a really, really huge year. And I hope that in our 40s, we can look back and be like, holy shit, we didn't know what we were talking about in our 30s. Like, I hope we just keep growing. But what's interesting is that he was older than you. So he ideally should have gone through that phase, right? Where he healed himself and his trauma instead of going from relationship to relationship.
And I think we all want to be the healer of our counterpart, and I went into that wanting to just fix all the pain that he faced from 17 years of his relationship. And I wanted him to fix all of that in me. Doesn't work. And to your point, yes. I feel like a lot of people will run through with thousands of Band-Aids trying to put it over a gunshot wound. And you're just like, well, it's going to help.
Yeah.
It's going to help. And then eventually, if you put the work into growing and healing yourself, then those Band-Aids, then you realize they're not helping. And then you find healthier coping mechanisms.
You know what I think a lot of women do too, speaking from experience, a lot of women take on damaged men. And when we do that, when we're focused on saving somebody else, we don't have to face our own problems.
Yes.
We don't have to look within. We don't have to figure out what our problems are or even try to address like our healing, because we can just focus all of our energy on these damaged men who aren't even asking to be saved or wanting to be saved for the most part.
I think that is true. I also there's that ex in particular, and he would even admit it, like he had horrible white knight syndrome, which doesn't really work out well for you when the damsel in distress doubles as her own dragon.
Oh,
it was my case.
Yeah.
You can't fight off demons of mental illness as bad as you want to. And I could see him feeling like he was failing me because I wasn't happy. And he thought he was the one that I thought he was the one that was making, that would make me happy. And we can get into this in a little bit, but at the time when it did happen, he really did what he could to make it seem like the reason for his leaving was because he couldn't just sit around and wait to find me someday. Like that was, he was like, I can't be the one to find you. So
you meet this new man, and you end up moving to Arkansas, and you're there for a few years, right? Yeah. So I feel I don't want to get lost in the weeds a little bit because I know your story so well. I don't want people to be like, what are they talking about? So we meet this new man. You're effectively co-parenting. You move to Arkansas to be with him because that's where he's from.
Yeah.
So you move there, you're there for a few years, and then suddenly there's this big push to move to Colorado.
Colorado's always been my promised land. It's something I've always wanted to do. I did live here back with my daughter's dad many, many years ago before we had her. We lived here for a couple years, not this area, but the state. And it was expensive and we were young. So I always wanted to come back. And the new husband knew this. At the time, he had some family members.
Let's just call him John. Should we just call him John?
Well, that's a lot nicer than his. Yeah.
We can call him Richard.
Yes.
Okay, so Richard.
Richard. So
Richard
anyway,
Cranium.
His father was in poor health, and he being an only child to him, he felt it. So we stayed there. After his father passed, several months went by, and I feel like that may have sparked. I mean, I always took credit for being his midlife crisis, but obviously not. Add another one in him. So he went through like a time, and he had told me, he's like, in preparing for this, like I'm probably gonna just deal with it in my own way, and I respected that. So over like the 6 months post that, I could tell he was kind of quiet, and I let it be. The beginning of the new year, he was like, maybe we could start thinking about relocating. I'm like, okay. So we talked about it. And then we had talked about going over here for my 30th birthday. So we planned a trip here. And then while we were here, a job opportunity happened upon itself. So I wanted it. And I was going to make sure we got it. I was going to get us here. And so I worked 4 jobs. There was about 3 months where I didn't take a day off. I was just constantly working. Doing everything I could to get here.
Mm-hmm.
Got us here. He was still looking for a job. The job that I actually took here, it ended up not working out, and I found something else. And then 2 weeks after I took my new job, I came home. He was home, and he said, "I'm moving out."
It gives me like goosebumps to just go through this.
It just makes
again.
my stomach turn every time. Yeah, I know.
The timeline is so ridiculous. So just evil. It's so mean. So you come home and he's like, bye.
Yeah. And he told me the reason was because he could just see me being depressed, and he just couldn't deal with it. And this was, the entire time, throughout our entire marriage, he was constantly, I was perfect to him. You're perfect. You're so perfect to me in every way. He fed me so like words and words, paragraphs, novels of just love stories. Like I had never had anybody feel towards me. And then to just come home to that, just,
now, admittedly, I can honestly you were say struggling with mental illness, right? At the time, it was a pretty significant theme in your life, right? So you go from being told that you're perfect and we'll get through this together, I'll help you, heal or whatever, to
I could never live without you. Or, all of it. Like I heard it all.
To now being told that you're the reason why he can't stay in the marriage, essentially.
Yeah. And like, here's a little interesting tidbit in that was that his adult son had moved to Colorado with us. He was over the South, ready to take on a new adventure. He was 20, so whenever he left us both. He didn't tell his son till the night that he pulled out of the driveway. He called him while he was at work and was like, "Hey, y'all figure it out." The week after that, I can't really tell you much. I didn't go to work. I was extremely fortunate that my daughter happened to be in New Mexico with her dad. And I had that week to not with her.
Yeah.
Not that the months after that were any better, but at least in the immediate, it was really rough. And I believed him. And I was just like, I did this. I was why this happened. And numerous times I was asked, is there somebody else? Is there somebody else? Is there somebody else? No, you don't understand. This man was obsessed with me. There was no way that he would have ever sought out the affections of another.
Well, that was my first question too. I was like,
that was everybody's first question. It was like what?
Who's he talking to? What's going on? Right?
So then, the cell phone bill was in my name and I paid it every month religiously. And I never looked at it. I never looked at the bill. I just paid it.
Yeah.
But that Friday, about 5 days after he had left, was when the bill was due. And I had to pay it anyway, and I decided to look at it. And I saw a number. And I looked back the previous number, and it was there. And the month before that, and before that, and before that.
For months.
For 15 months, I believe I counted. It started just a few months after his dad had passed, while we were still in Arkansas.
Wow. I knew it had been a while. I don't think I knew or remembered that it had been that long.
Yeah.
So now, whenever he left, he had told you that because that was my first question too, is where the fuck is he? Like, you guys just moved there. How does he just go find a place to stay? And what was his story of where he was staying?
Oh, I guess in the time that he was supposed to be looking for a job, which, by the way, I want the record to show that the job that he ended up getting was one that I applied for him.
Oh my God. This guy.
You're welcome. I guess he was trying to scope out because she didn't live here. She moved here a few months after he left me. And we refer to her as the Minnesota Mule. So, forever may she reign.
So
she's younger than me, so bless her heart, you know, she just doesn't know what she's in for with that.
Oh my goodness. So so she ended up moving there to be with.
I believe on his birthday or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, that is such a love story.
I know.
I can't, the audacity. So you're here in Colorado with no support system.
Yeah.
And you have literally had your life destroyed. Everything that you thought was going to happen, all the big plans and the hopes and the dreams, are just gone. And you're still living with his son, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And even his son is like, what the hell?
Yeah. He and I, we have a very interesting relationship. Like, you know, we're not super far in age difference. So whenever he stayed, like we just maintained roommate relationship. He helped with the bills. It was nice to have him around in case I needed to have like some me time. And since I don't have any family here to babysit my kid and you just don't want to trust random strangers with your kid, it was pretty easy to pay him off to like, hey, if I order pizza, you want to just like hang here tonight? So yeah, he was here. We ended up finishing out the lease so that it gave us an opportunity to kind of save up some money and figure out the next step. So we did that. And I will give credit where credit is due that it was probably guilt money. It was like, I completely fucked up your life. So here, I'm going to help you out with your rent. Well, I'm going to help you finish out this lease with my son.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I saved, and when it first happened and I was in the shock of it all, I'll be honest with you, I was like so dangerously close to moving back home to Roswell, New Mexico. Like, no, like I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't stay here. I can't do this. So, and I thought about it.
For people who don't know, if you grow up in Roswell, we have friends and family that still live there, but if you leave Roswell, you cannot go back. It's a small town. They're very close-minded, and there's nothing there. The state is dead, essentially. So I've had moments where I have briefly considered that, if XYZ happens, I'm going to have to move back to Roswell. And that is like, it's the biggest, most defeating feeling. It's giving up. It's resignation. You're done.
Yeah. So the first aspect of that was obviously financial. I live in one of the most expensive areas of the United States. So can I afford to be a single mom up here alone. No family, no, and I sat down, I did some reevaluating, I consolidated some debt, made it work. And then the other aspect of it is emotionally. Can I heal alone? Or do I need to rely on my family and my friends? Do I need to be around? Do I need to have people around to help me with my daughter?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not good advice at all. So do not take this to anybody. But the deciding factor for me was I was in no place to be with anybody by any means. But I'm like, eventually I will be. Eventually I'm going to want to get back out there.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I realized that the idea of being with anything within 100 miles of my hometown, just no, I can't do it. I'm like, at least up here, there is a variety. So I decided to stay, and I don't regret it. It's been, so he left in October 2017. So it's been a little, 2.5 years? It's been a little over that.
Yeah.
It's been a minute. It'll be 3 years.
I don't think you could have, you had no way of knowing then about that decision to stay, and wondering if you could do it alone, if you could heal, if you could not even heal. I don't even think you were thinking of healing. I think you were just thinking of getting through each day, right? And I don't think you could have known it then, but how necessary isolation is for healing. True isolation, like to be alone with only yourself, is something profound happens. And that's why I talk about this a lot in terms of motherhood. We talk about how lonely it can be whenever you first have your little baby and suddenly the friends are gone, family's not showing up, whatever the case may be. We use that isolation as an excuse sometimes to just feel bad about the fact that we're isolated. And I feel like it could be if we started reframing the way that we talk about loneliness, we can maybe start seeing it as kind of necessary. Yes. That you can gain a lot from it.
Yeah, I absolutely. I would say that I tell people, if you can't like your own company, if you can't tolerate, hanging out with yourself, then how are you going to expect other people to want to hang out with you? If you don't know yourself, if you can't be with yourself, then you can't expect other people to want to be around you all the time. You don't even want to be around you all the time. It was, and I was always an independent person. I was always extremely independent. Mm-hmm. But yeah, being alone, facing that solitary, and not letting yourself just distract out of it, not saying, ooh, I'm lonely, I need to text this person, I'm gonna watch this, I'm gonna, don't distract yourself from the loneliness, but really think about yourself, check in with you and be like, how are you feeling? How's it going? Are you feeling any harboring resentment or anger towards anything that you need to work through? Take the opportunity.
People say all the time to sit with your feelings, and I think we say it more than we actually do it, because it's very difficult to do sometimes. But you learn so much about yourself. And what's interesting is that since this has happened, you're really a completely different person. And I it's crazy how the way that I think of it, these traumatic events in our lives that just crumble us and bring us to the ground. I always imagine literally falling apart into many pieces. And then from there, you get to pick up what pieces you're going to use to rebuild your life. and you can let go of everything else. But you have to really sit with those feelings and figure out what parts of yourself are you going to carry forward? What habits are you going to carry forward? So what do you think helped you? What was your process for getting through those initial feelings, like that first season of having to rebuild your life whenever you're still reeling from everything that's happened? Like, let's say somebody's listening to this right now and their husband just left them, or their wife just left them, and they have no idea how to even put one foot in front of the other.
A few different things. One, you are not alone. And you will find that in the 7 billion people on this planet every single day, there's a million of them that are going through a horrible, horrible breakup of some sort. Just knowing that there's so many people who share your story. I mean, there's like a divorce support groups and various social medias that have millions of people sharing their stories, and just knowing there's other people that are feeling that or have felt that, and that even in aloneness, there's solidarity in that this is a very, very common thing. I mean, unfortunately, it's more common to be divorced than to have that 70-year marriage that sticks out. Mm-hmm. Not saying that people don't have it, but the reality is that people grow, people change, shit happens. And knowing that you're not alone. For me, facing your biggest fear, that was like the worst thing that in my mind at the time that I could have ever suffered through. Mm-hmm. Whenever you get through that, it really puts in perspective the rest of your life. And so the things that used to stress me out before, like, I'm going to stay up worrying about this financial situation that I cannot do a damn thing about tonight. Or I'm going to sit here and stress about the fact that I've put on 2 pounds and I'm practically just doing everything I can to not do that. Mm-hmm. It's once you get through it though, it's like, I faced that. I went through it, and now everything else, I will figure it out. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm not going to just throw myself into my work and become that like crazy psycho workaholic that I'm known to do. Like I keep my coping in check, and I become a much more laid back person. I'm like, okay, well, cool.
Yeah, I think you learned to trust yourself.
Yeah.
That you can do it. You can figure stuff out. Special guest appearance.
But yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people have a hard time with. And that's why even things as silly as like fitness goals or hobby goals or business goals or whatever are so important. It's really not about the goal. It's about being able to overcome hard things, mm-hmm. so that when life fucking levels you, you have a little bit of trust in yourself that you can figure it out.
Well, so this is a side note. After that, this was last summer actually, so almost a year ago, I went through an apartment fire. Me, animals, child were all fine, but lost all possessions due to water and smoke damage. Did not faze me. I was on the phone with leasing offices that afternoon saying, hey, like, need a place. Let me know where I can live. And I was like filling out applications, and one of the Red Cross volunteers that worked my case called me and was like, do you need anything? And I was like, no, got this, working on this. And they were like, I have never in my 20 years seen anybody just get through a crisis like you. And I'm like, well, experience.
I know. So ever since this divorce, I remember you had a few things. Like you've had animals get sick, right?
Oh yeah.
And like it's just like one thing after another. And I remember every time I'd hear from you, I'm like, you always have something going on. Like there's always some crisis. Not like saying anything about you, but I'm just like, Jesus, like that would destroy me. My life is so boring. I don't have things happen, like so like I experience like secondhand anxiety hearing about your stuff, but I also see like the person that you've become, and it's so crazy because I remember you would have these long depressive periods, and you'd be like, I haven't cleaned my house, like whatever, these symptoms, these major symptoms of depression, where the smallest thing feels so impossible. But now you've just become this person who is very, very self-aware. And I think that's something that we lack whenever we're very young and very naive. We don't have enough self-awareness to notice when we're slipping, especially if we have problems with mental health. And now I see that with you. You notice, and you're responsible to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it, I was self-aware sometimes and just like ignoring it. Like, I know this, like, I am very aware. This is like, I am perpetuating this cycle. I'm the person that can stop this.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like after facing this, then like other things have just seemed significantly more trivial since then. Now, I will say, like, the depression, like, it doesn't go away. And a piece of advice that I would give to anybody who has that is just like whenever you have a diet and you don't want, as soon as you deprive yourself of a particular food, you want it.
Mm-hmm.
I found with balancing my mental health is I have to give me those days. So if I wake up one morning and I'm just not into it. I don't want to do anything. I just want to wallow. Now those days, I haven't had them recently, but in the beginning of all of this, they were pretty frequent. And so I just made the decision, I will give me the day. Give yourself the day to eat Grubhub 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Watch Office for the 10th time, like whatever. Like, don't do anything. Just do that.
Sit and feel
only
shitty.
the day. But only the day. Mm-hmm. So that you know that tomorrow morning you are damn sure going to get up, you're going to make your bed, you're going to take a shower, and you're going to do all the things because you gave yourself the day. And I found that if I sprinkle those like, I'm not feeling it, but I don't let it happen consecutively. It doesn't carry into day 2. It doesn't carry into like week 7.
Yeah.
It's been really good for me. So, and then obviously building on other things, then those days become less and less, to where sometimes it's just like it's not even because I'm feeling depressed. It's just because I just want to chill and hang out with my cat.
I have those days too, and they're very intentional. We also, something that is super helpful is that we have these lists. I've made a list, you've made a list, my friend Hannah makes a list. So if you're somebody who struggles with depression or anxiety, mostly depression, I guess, what we have done is developed a list of non-negotiables, and they're going to look different for everybody. And so for me, on my list, every day I have to make sure that I'm, showering, that I put on a little bit of makeup, make my bed, clean my kitchen. I show on Instagram all the time, like my counters being clean and clear. That's not because I'm like bragging about being clean or whatever. That is very literally a mental health thing. So we found that if we have these lists of just bare minimums, that it really helps our overall mental state. And what I've noticed, and you can speak to this too, is whenever we slip on those non-negotiables, your mental health goes right with it. It's so crazy. So what's on your list, like your short list of must do's?
So mine, I recently started doing daily walks. And I started that maybe a couple of months ago, right whenever Rona started getting, and it was like the daily walks were really good for the kid and I to just get out. And I noticed how much, just beyond the physical health, but just the mental clarity of just those walks. Cause she and I, like, she was usually riding her bike ahead of me. So I would have an earbud with some music in one ear, but just the walks. So that's become part of my, like, I have to get up in the morning and take the dog for a walk, not just to go downstairs to go to the restroom, but like an actual we're trekking, however long it takes. So I have to make my bed as well. And I'm the same with clean and tidy. I'm like you. It's not like a braggy. It's not like look at my insane nitpicky OCD-ness. It's just whenever I have a clean home and a clean space and I don't have clutter just piling up everywhere, I feel better. I feel better for me. I don't judge anybody else's home or anything like that. I'm for like, sure. I get it. Like, I have let my apartment get like that a million times over. I'm there. But for me, if I want to feel okay with me, then I have to keep my space clean. That's what I need to be happy. That keeps my like mental health like on the up and up.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to self-awareness, being aware of what you do and how it affects how you're feeling. It, like you said, if you're having these days where you're ordering Grubhub for every meal, how do you feel when you do that for 2 days, 3 days?
Oh, it's awful.
You start to feel really shitty. And that, again, like I said, it comes back to self-awareness and self-discovery, kind of figuring out what works for you. So now you did not have children with this husband.
Correct.
So that's good. So you don't have to co-parent, but you do co-parent with your first husband. And like you had mentioned in the beginning, that you have a very good co-parenting relationship. So I obviously can't speak to any of this, but I do have, I have family and stuff. I'm familiar with a lot of people's co-parenting tactics. My brother-in-law actually has a baby now, and he is navigating co-parenting. And for me, I think it's one of those things where I can see very clearly what people do wrong, but because I don't do it myself, I can't speak on it, like, because it's not my place. I haven't done it. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And because I know a lot of people who are really bad at co-parenting too. So let's have like some insight. You can share some insight, because I know that there are a lot of people on my Instagram and stuff who are dealing with co-parenting and maybe having a rough time with it. Yeah. So let's hear your thoughts.
Well, like I said, we had made the promise before we even had kids. We're like, if we ever have kids and shit just doesn't work out, let's always be friends for the kids, any that we might have. And we were able to do that. And that doesn't mean that we have a perfect relationship. And we absolutely disagree on stuff. We will absolutely not see eye to eye. We have different parenting styles. He's more strict in certain areas, where I'm more of like the pick your battles.
Yeah.
So we might not always agree on things, but we always agree that we're going to respect each other as a co-parent to our daughter. And we'll always do what we can to give her the best life that we can. We're not
keep her best interests in mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it obviously helps whenever you have two people who are mature and can take out any personal emotional hurt that they're feeling towards that person. You have to compartmentalize. You just have to. You can't expect to build this different type of relationship with this person if you're constantly harboring pain or resentment or whatever else you might be feeling from this type of relationship. Like you have to bury it, and then you have to build this friendship.
That's probably really important, understanding that you're entering in a new relationship dynamic. I don't think people think about that, really.
I mean, and it's hard. It's hard if you're, if you're slighted, or, if one party wasn't up for it or up for the split. Whatever.
Yeah. Lots of feelings.
So compartmentalize, take those feelings, put them away, and keep it kid focused. And we've always done everything we can to appear like friends. We've done family pictures together. We've celebrated birthdays together. We've met at Six Flags together and taken her out. He's been in a pretty long-term, she's pretty much, a relationship for a significant portion of our daughter's life. And we get along well. Again, getting along well doesn't mean that you're not going to have disagreements. And something that he and I do, if we just disagree on something where I feel one way and he feels another, and we're not going to come to it, then we'll just table it. We'll be on the phone and we'll just say, okay, well, let's just, we're not getting anywhere with this. Let's just table it, and we'll think about it some more, see if we can come up with some alternatives, and then we'll just bring it back. We'll talk about it next time.
That's probably really good to take that space and be able to get your thoughts around, again, something that people have a really hard time doing. Me especially, because I'm such a talker. I'm like, nope, we're going to sit here and figure it out, even if we're going to talk for 5 hours. So I have to fight that initial urge to be like, no, fuck that.
I used to be that way. And then through growth of disastrous relationships, I have found that you really need to give yourself the time. I'm at a place now to where it's if I feel a specific way, if somebody does something to me, be it in a romantic relationship or friendship, whatever, I'm not going to instantaneously just be like, hey, you did that to me. I'm going to take a bit, and I'm going to give myself usually about 24 hours, and I'm going to think about it and say, were you really should you be upset about that? Or were you just kind of in a bad mood? Or do you think maybe you were a little hormonal? Think about it and determine, is this something that is really worth discussing? And if after 24 hours, after my emotions have been kind of removed from the situation, then I can look at it and say, yeah, no, that still pisses me off, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's
so then you can always know, if I'm going to talk to you for a problem, it's because that I've thought about it, and I know, and I have a full on, I've had 15 conversations in every different way that this can go, and you're going to apologize.
No, that's super key for me too, is taking that space so that the emotional charge can die down. Cause I'll say some shit if I'm feeling a certain way, and my mouth always gets me in trouble. And I say a lot of shit. I'm mean. People see what I post online and stuff. And I try very hard to be that person, but it's because I have to fight the urge of my default wiring is to just be
you
an
and
asshole.
That I
destroy.
slide into your DMs just mean as hell.
Yeah. So, but yes, again, that's something that we've had to learn to do. And that's probably so important whenever you are co-parenting. I have step siblings, and growing up, my step siblings, for their birthday parties, My dad's ex-wife and her new husband, like, they were at our house for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and birthday parties, and I never knew it was a weird thing until I got old enough for people to be like, isn't that weird that, like, your parents' exes are in the picture? And I just think it's so nice. It has to be
It
so
shouldn't
nice
be.
for the kid to have both their parents
Oh yeah.
in the
And
room at, for certain events.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, he um so here was it recently, maybe like a year or so ago, they came up and we made a big deal about going and getting her ears pierced because she'd been asking to do it for a while. So yeah, we like to do those things. And then on the flip side, if she gets in trouble, like a big trouble, like if something happens at school or something, she's not going to manipulate and try to split hairs between the two of us. We're very united when it comes to her. Now we might disagree privately, and I might tell him after the fact, like, "Hey, I don't really agree with how this went down or whatever." Up front, I'm gonna agree, but then
Yeah.
afterwards, I might be like, "Hey, we might need, you don't ever want to show that there's a weakness in the link." So,
That's a
there
really
there
good
have been
point.
times where if she gets in big trouble, and I mean, I have a good kid, but on the instances where something happens, I talk to her about it, and then I put her dad on speakerphone, and I'm like, "Hey, tell your dad what happened," and
Yeah.
then like he'll talk to her about it, and then in front of her, we'll be on the phone and we'll discuss it and determine like if there's an appropriate, grounding or whatever. So we're very united.
That's a
Um,
good point that she can't play sides if you guys are on the same side.
I've seen it, friends, relatives, whatever. I've seen it to where, yeah, they play against each other, and kids are manipulative little assholes sometimes. Like they're
They're
great, but
smart.
they are very smart and they can pick
Yeah.
up quite well. If there's tension here, I can play that to my benefit, and I won't have that. No. So, we try to stay united. We always just try to make sure that she's taken care of and that we can do what we can to make sure that going forward, in the future, she can always come to both of us for anything.
Yeah.
And we try to stay on the same page as much as we can.
Yeah. That's super important. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, let's talk about resources. Was there anything that you read, that you watched? I don't know, maybe social media accounts or anything that kind of helped you put your divorce in perspective or helped you through any of that?
Yeah, I had a lot of coping mechanisms. Some of them were not so good. I tried to do a lot of things to undo the hurt that was done to me.
Yeah.
And you can't, you have to feel it.
Yeah.
You noticed I didn't talk my pain on social media. Nobody knew, I don't think, until I reverted back to my previous name that anything had happened. I never addressed it. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like social media offers to be a window into your life. And the more you post, the bigger the window is about your personal life. The bigger that window is. And then whenever something happens, then that everybody's in that window just watching you. And I didn't want that.
People feel entitled to more information than you want to give them. I've noticed. And that's always very icky, especially, I mean, I notice too, whenever people make like vague posts, even I am like, I'm like, you share everything, and now you're just like going to give us a teaser? I've been invested in your relationship. You're not going to tell me how it ended? Like,
Season 9 of this train wreck. Don't turn it off now.
Yeah. So even I have to catch myself because I feel entitled to other people's information too. Plus, I think that like healing and dealing with something as traumatic as that is so ugly, and it's so gross, and it feels so dirty that it's probably best
Do it privately.
to not do it so publicly. So you have that perspective to talk about it without that emotional charge, and to really process it so you can organize your thoughts.
Absolutely. The other part of that is the memories. So I forced myself the first year, I forced me to open every memory, I'm forced me to open it. I forced me to read it, look at it. Oh, look at these happy pictures.
Ugh.
Oh, look at this gut-wrenching thing that he posted on my wall that one time.
Mm-hmm.
I had to see it. I had to look at it and say, okay, there it is. And then once I went through that year, once I cycled through and saw all those memories, I hid them. So I didn't have to see them again.
Mm-hmm.
So then the flip side of that is I don't have any other memories of me like being like this emotionally fucked mess either, popping up on my wall after the math. Like, I don't have that. It's just like, oh, there's like a lot of silence, and then Lindsay's happy again.
That's a really good point, because those memories are, I get memories from whenever I had my really depressive episode, whenever the twins were little, and even the posts that I made that weren't necessarily like super crazy or emotional, reading the vague words or whatever it was, sometimes it was just a picture of the babies, I have that feeling immediately again. I knew it
reminds you. It's like a trigger memory of like, or trigger emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, behind that post, I was a mess. So that's a really good point, that you don't have those popping up.
Yeah. Don't. Then you don't have to, you heal from it one time, and then you don't have to re-heal from it a year from that. Like,
that's a really good point. Did you do any journaling, like any private journaling or anything?
I did. I did some journaling. I really took to heart loving myself. And I know it's like the most cliche of like, oh, everybody says love you. But really like taking the time and saying like, I've been through a lot, and I'm a good person, and I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be, me and my kid are going to be okay. Like we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And I briefly went through certain meetups. There's different like single parent support group meetups in the area. So I did attend a few of those. And again, it's sometimes, even if you don't say anything, if you just sit and just listen, sometimes hearing your pain through somebody else's voice is just as healing as hearing it out of your own. Like, you can just listen to somebody else, and your heart mourns for what they're going through because you've gone through it, but you don't have to talk about it. You just heal from their words.
Yeah. So how do you feel about, because this is something that comes up on social media a lot. There used to be this really big saying, right, where people would say, you know, you can't expect anybody to love you until you really love yourself. And then a lot of people on social media started saying, you can't say that because that's telling people that they're unworthy of love if they don't love themselves. What do you think about that?
I think if you don't love yourself, you won't be able to recognize that you are capable of being loved.
I think it really affects the amount of love that you allow yourself to receive, right? If you
feel like I'm not worthy of this, then you're not really letting yourself receive what you're worthy of. And and you're going to go, it's not a comfortable place to be in the healing process. Change doesn't come from comfortable places, unfortunately. So you might, I did go through times where my daughter, she saw me cry. I didn't burden her with what I was going through, but I also felt it important for her to see that, and because God forbid that she ever go through something like this someday, that, I want her to remember that I wasn't perfect 100% of the time, and that there were some times that I cried, but I kept it together, and I didn't just air my dirty laundry out. Like I kept it classy. And I picked up the pieces gracefully, and I'll always be proud of, I might not have always made the best coping mechanism or used the best coping mechanisms, but I will be proud of how I handled that situation, and making myself better through it, rather than just, like we talked about in the beginning, rather than this just being another, I'm going to just run into the first thing I can. I'm going to try to find somebody else to just take my attention away from that. I didn't do that this time. And I actually was just like, no, be alone, be hurt, feel it, and get through it, and then see what happens. And, I did the dating apps things for a while, and I mean, it wasn't bad. But the question that I hated the most was always, so what are you looking for? And I found in my growth, my answer to them was like, not a damn thing. Like, I'm not looking for anything, but if something shows up in my life that wows me, like, then it'll be there.
That's a really important distinction, because a lot of people do, even if they don't admit it to themselves, go out looking for something. They're looking to have something filled. Yeah. And it doesn't make you like bad for doing that or anything, because like you said, it's a coping mechanism. But we have to really do a self audit, a self inventory, and check our coping mechanisms. Is this coping mechanism gonna leave me in a better position in a month, 6 months, or am I trying to avoid a momentary feeling?
Exactly. And and in those instances, it was like always the latter. But I told my daughter towards the beginning, I remember I told her this, and it's something that I've just carried with me ever since. And it was, I promised her, I said that nobody will ever take our happiness again. Because I had realized that what I had found in happiness, I'd found in him. So whenever he left, he took it with him. And so we had to find a happy life for ourselves. And I told her, I said, we are going to be happy, and we're going to have this happy space. And anybody else that we let into our lives is going to add to that happiness. But if they ever leave, they're not taking it with us. We going to be happy. They're not taking it. It's here. It's here, and that's it. And
that's so good. And as a mother to a daughter, to a young woman, that is going to be huge for her, to see her mother struggle and then overcome. And also, I just can't wait until she's older, and you can have that conversation, and you can see what she thinks of it, like what her retrospect is on the situation.
Yeah, I think so. She's crazy intuitive, and like really, I mean, I can have an adult conversation with her. She's very smart, and she was essential to to heal for myself, because it really gave me the chance to evaluate me as a mother. I always feel like, to my own detriment in previous relationships, I always put more focus on the relationship than parenthood. And I mean, I do think that you need to maintain a good and healthy partnership, but it really gave me the chance to just give her that time, and it's just, it's us, and it's great. With that being said, I do have a slighter, happier ending to my stories, which is when I wasn't looking, and when I was just focusing on taking care of myself, making sure every day I was just a slightly better version than I was yesterday. I started seeing someone and did not start seeing him on a dating app. Actually, we met in the workplace, which is funny because my daughter still refers to him at times as my coworker. She's like, "Oh, you're going to gonna have a sleepover at your coworker's house?" I'm like, "Yes, thank you."
But when we grow up, we don't have to sleep at all of our coworkers' houses.
We don't. It's not a thing. We don't just do. Oh, yeah.
No, but now you have probably a very different perspective on this new relationship, right? Like going into it.
I do. Yeah, I was whole. And I think I've told you this before whenever we started dating. This is like the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. It started whenever I was in a good place. He was in a good place. Things have clicked. There's not a pressure to go and do anything. There's not an insecurity of constant contact.
That's probably one of the biggest advantages. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's probably one of the biggest advantages of like being divorced and dating in your 30s or whatever, is that if you're doing it right, you have your own separate lives and you're just coming together to add value to each other's lives.
Yeah, like, do not date out of necessity. Your address should not be affected by your relationship status. Like, do not date somebody because you need something from them or they need something from you. Like, sorry, my phone's ringing.
Okay. No, I agree with that because it gets complicated, and then you can't leave as easily whenever things start to go south. And and another thing is you start really justifying bad behavior on the part of your partner. Whereas if, now, I mean, I know that you've probably had, because you've been together for a while, so I know you've probably had situations where you've wondered, is this thing really do I need to keep going with this relationship? Should I cut it out maybe? And it's probably a relief to not have that panicked pressure of the idea of the relationship ending just because you'll be fine. So you can really think about it objectively.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, to his counterpart too, like, I mean, if I were a man and just knew a woman was seeing me because like she needed me for something, I mean, that would just be a pretty shitty thing to do.
Don't tell Brian that, because I got bills.
I got bills, man. You keep cooking in that quarter-ass cooking show, though. But no, I mean, it's good because we each have our own lives. Like, he has a couple of kids close to age with mine, so it's really great. We can do trips and we can take the kids to go do fun stuff, and we'll do like game nights together. Like, we'll do the stuff. But a lot of the time during the week, especially during the school year when my daughter is here with me, he's busy. He's got his kiddos, or he's got work stuff he's got going on. And if I'm busy, I have stuff going on over here, then that's fine. And there's not this expectation or this demand of like, where are you, or what are you doing, or like, any kind of fear. There's no
and you can also
mistrust in one another. Like it's just a very chill and trusting. Like it's just a good deal.
And you can keep your focus in
Yes.
check. You can focus on yourself, focus on your relationship with your kid, and then whatever he brings to the table is just extra. That's so nice.
I mean, he's so different than anything that any other relationship I've ever had. And there was a learning curve for me to try to understand, because the one before him was so wordy. And through this, I learned, like, before I got into this new relationship, I learned, like, words don't mean a damn thing. Like, they can be easily said, and they can just easily be forgotten, like they never existed.
Yeah.
And while I don't get a lot of words in my current relationship, what I do get is action. Like, he's the type that if he's out finding and he sees a crafty thing that he thinks his daughter would like to do, then he just grabs an extra and is like, hey, I got one for yours too. They can do it this weekend. Yeah. Like, I mean, he's just, and beyond that, like, I mean, outside of like gifts and stuff like that, but just, going over there, hanging out, I feel cared. I feel cared about. I feel like at peace and happy. There's not tension or anything like that going on. We just get to, live. And there's not really, we always joke about like the dream house. He is allergic to cats, and my cat is my life. So I jokingly say that I have my cat is my life partner, and then he is my Sancho that I go and see him. So, there's not any serious discussions of relocations. We don't really have a push for it. I mean, we live a mile apart, see each other
again,
whenever
that's
we
probably
want.
another benefit, is there not being a rush to do anything. You don't have to rush to get married or rush to move in. We can just live life. And
yeah. And I don't, my daughter, she's asked, because I, like, here a while back, I told her I needed to tell her something. I don't even remember what it was, but she was like, are you guys getting married? And I'm like, oh no. I'm like, honey, let's just sit down. Like, I don't have anything against marriage. I think it can be a beautiful, legal binding contract between people if they want it. As for me, I just feel like I am good without that. Like, I can be absolutely committed to somebody. I am absolutely committed to this man. And I would love to have like a million years just like I have with this man. But we don't need the government involved. And I feel like he also feels that way. So I don't see me doing it again. I mean, things don't work out here, and there's some like 88-year-old oil tycoon that likes a chick that looks like a potato.
Shut up.
Here.
Hit me up.
But
that's so funny.
Outside of that, we good.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and having this conversation. Okay. It has been a very long road for you. But seeing you on the other side of it is so nice. And I know a couple people right now going through a divorce, and I mean, the only thing I can think of whenever people announce their divorce on social media, and I see these women posting about it, all I can think about is, in a year, you're going to be so much better. Like, people grow so much through these traumatic, difficult, just horrible events. And I think that's the one thing that everybody should kind of just keep on the forefront of their mind whenever they're dealing with something really, really horrible, is that if you just hunker down and do the work, you're going to be in a completely different place so soon.
And you will not recognize the broken you. Like, you won't even remember what being in that place will feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've enjoyed it. You know, us talking about this sparked like a desire within to really document what I've gone through and things that I've just lived and have perspective on over the years, and hope to maybe turn it into a book someday. But
I think you should, for sure.
I can definitely say that the biggest thing that's helped me is having friends. Having you, I mean, to just be able to just share a screenshot of a memory and just be like, this came up today, and just like weep, message you while I'm feeling it. I have a person. I have my best friend of like 26 years, and he and I talk pretty much daily. And you don't necessarily need to have millions and millions of friends or followers, but if you have like 2 or 3 good people that you can just text and say, I'm feeling it today, and then just let them be there for you. Let them ask, like, if you need to vent about it, if you just want them to send you like hate metal to rage out while you're on the treadmill, like, channel it. Like, but like, find friends, like, have a couple that you can just
you got to
turn to when it's like the darkest part.
Yeah, you got to keep a couple people in your pocket for sure, because it makes a huge difference just to be able to send those text messages, like you said. So that's so good. I really do hope that you start working on a book, or at least a website. I've been telling you for a long time to make an Instagram.
I know. Well, I mean, I have an Insta, I just don't use it.
So I'll talk to you whenever we get off here. I'll talk to you about it.
Okay,
But
sounds good.
Thank you again. And
thank you.